Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Cipher Brief virtual studio. I'm Tom Nagorski, where we have been talking a lot lately about the rupture in the transatlantic alliance, by which we mean the rupture between the United States and the Trump administration and many of its longtime allies in Europe. But today we focus on something that's been getting less attention in terms of one of the consequences of that rupture, and that is the sharing of intelligence between the United States and its longtime partners on the other side of the Atlantic, and the damage that may be done now or in the future to that. This week, we published a piece by Matthew Heffler and Ronan Mainprize, both of whom are with the Center for Statecraft and Strategic Communication at the Stockholm School of Economics. The headline of their piece was Trump and Europe's Intelligence Sharing Problem. So that is the focus of our conversation today. And we're delighted to be joined by both the authors of that piece who are in Stockholm today. And just to start and to be clear, because that headline suggests something. But as far as we know, other than the recent cutoff in terms of U.S. intelligence sharing with Ukraine, we're not talking about any rupture yet in that vein. So what is it? Let's start with you, Matthew Heffler, and thanks to you both for joining us. But given that hasn't happened yet, what is it that worries you and moved you to write the piece you did?
Well, thanks so much, Tom, for having us. We're so pleased to write in the Cipher Brief and to join you here today. I think what drove Ronan and I to look at this piece was that the intelligence liaison, the intelligence relationship between the United States and its European partners, was both an important aspect of the larger relationship as we view it, but also something that needed a bit more focus on with everything going on in the world. And like you said, I think just for my point, I think it's worth touching on the fact that the kind of temporary cutting off of intelligence to Ukraine, which was a highly notable thing that recently happened in the news. Part of what drove it home for me was that this was done publicly, whereas so often intelligence liaison is kept quiet, kept below the level of kind of public scrutiny and politics. And so I think for me, this is one thing that motivated my part in helping to write the piece with Ronan.
Yeah, I think we, as historians, look back on decades of transatlantic intelligence cooperation, and we looked at what had kept it so strong. And I think we started to realize that what has been keeping it so strong was slowly starting to be eroded by the current administration in the US. And that, I think, was sort of the call to arms for us to write the piece.
And when you say, Ronan, staying with you for a moment, started to be eroded, I mean, your piece goes so far as to say at one point, it's an urgent problem, quote, the survival of the Euro-American intelligence relationship can no longer be taken for granted. What are the hints or the evidence points that you see for that possibility?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, transatlantic or all intelligence cooperation is often called low politics. It seems to mostly be unaffected by high politics, by presidents and prime ministers. It seems to weather many storms.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the US, we can see the administration exerting, I think, unprecedented control over the American intelligence community, at least unprecedented in terms of its sort of how extreme it's getting. We've seen presidents put in loyalists to top positions. We've seen them fire people. But I think in many ways, Trump is taking this to new territory. And this will affect what has kept transatlantic intelligence cooperation so strong, the personal relationships, the shared grand strategic aims, and the shared espionage cultures as well, I think are being damaged.
And just when we consider these sorts of things, the way we've looked at it in this piece, this framework, what we're really looking at is the sorts of critical aspects that when historians we look at these things points to the way that trust has been maintained, because I think it's important to underscore that both either when doing archival work or speaking with former members of the intelligence community on these sorts of issues, it's that deep trust that helps sustain these intelligence relationships, intelligence liaison, no matter what's going on at the high level. And a lot of that is trust in the professionalism of the other source, that of the other agency, that it won't that intelligence won't be politicized, but of course that it won't be leaked or given to adversaries either. And so I think that those sorts of foundations are looking slightly more shaky today than previously.
recognizing excellence in national security. The Cipher Brief Honors Dinner celebrates those who've made a real difference in protecting our nation. It's an unforgettable evening with top leaders in the field. Join us in honoring these remarkable contributions. Reserve your seat now at cipherbriefhonors.com.
And is it, just to get into the nitty gritty here, do you worry about, well, I'll ask the open-ended question about specific things you worry about, but is the notion that on the European side, there may be concerns that rise to the level that I'm not so sure we want to share X or Y, or is it in the other direction, or is it both? Matthew, you first.
Sure. I think from what we can see from open behavior and news reporting on the issues, that it appears that there would be some cause to start questioning the sharing of certain sources, or some of the most secret, some of your most trusted sources. Part of this, I mean, comes from some of the most obvious things we've seen, that U.S. policy has oriented towards a closer relationship, or a rapprochement of sorts with Russia, and particularly between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. And so when we're talking about when it comes to Russia, especially during this land war in Ukraine, when this is in many ways one of the most poignant security threats that many of these European services would face and focus on, that sort of rapprochement without proper, or at least without on the surface level, clear consultations, clear preparation, kind of a coherent line together, I think that does raise alarm bells in allied services that don't necessarily look like they're stopping sharing, of course, but perhaps might lead to decisions like that or considerations like that.
Ronan, you want to add to that at all? Specific things that worry you?
Yeah, I mean, intelligence sharing is such a crucial and fast-moving exercise that I think if even hints of doubt come in, and even if things are questioned for a day, that can mean crucial intelligence is not passed on. I think some people in Europe are absolutely beginning to question whether human sources and the intelligence that they provide can be passed on. Obviously, with signals intelligence, the technological infrastructure is so tightly bound that it's impossible to stop sharing signals. But in many ways, I think people will start to question whether sensitive, high sensitive sources can be shared with the US in this current administration.
I don't know what form of intelligence this stuff takes, but one thing which you didn't get at in your piece was raised in a different platform in a conversation we had the other day, has to do with the Five Eyes network of intelligence sharing. And it came up because of the U.S. pause instituted on intelligence sharing with Ukraine. So under the Five Eyes, obviously the U.S. and U.K. are sharing an abundance of intelligence. And so the hypothetical there, not something we could know on our own, of course, was, okay, the U.S. may have paused intelligence sharing with Ukraine, but the U.K. is seeing what we're seeing to a large extent. I'm not sure how great an extent. Nothing to stop the UK then from sharing with Ukraine. Does that play into your thinking at all on this? Is that a kind of what happens to Five Eyes when there is suspicion or concern about one of those eyes? Matthew?
I think when we look, you've touched on one of the key questions of the current kind of uncertain period, or a period of transition, when we're thinking about when we come to the Five Eyes. I think this is the gold standard for close intelligence cooperation.
Right.
And so the idea that there is any question at all about either sharing material or holding back, let's say, human, rather than letting SIGINT and these normal channels flow, I think that speaks to the larger problem right there. But I would be remiss if you don't mention reporting around unconfirmed or denied reports that Canada's position in the Five Eyes has been wrapped into larger issues in the U.S.-Canadian relationship. And you see some of this happening, potentially as an outside observer, when the new Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is met with President Macron in France, and are really already talking about a bilateral intelligence and security, increasing their bilateral and intelligence security relationship. Now that's pretty vague at this point. We don't know what that means, but even when we mention the Five Eyes, the establishment of those sorts of points in public, I think, are meant to send signals to other partners that we need to maintain the sort of trust and professionalism that has maintained these relationships.
Yeah, well, that's a good bridge maybe to some of the solutions you propose to, I guess, avoid the crisis and the nasty scenarios that you lay out. Uh, Ronan, I know there are many. Ronan, maybe start with you. What can be done, do you think, to make this a story with a better outcome?
Hmm. Well, I think Europe essentially needs to change its intelligence posture. It needs to start thinking in new ways about how it's going to manage security challenges without, or potentially without, the full force of the American intelligence apparatus behind it. I think, first of all, it's sort of a given. It's sort of the conversation that's happening in Europe around everything at the moment is to increase the budgets. And I think as part of defense budgets, we have to make the argument that military effectiveness is greatly diminished if we don't have enhanced intelligence as well. I think, secondly, we have to reprioritize on certain targets. That money needs to be spent wisely. Of course, Russia is the key threat, but it's not only a military threat, it's a sort of gray zone threat that people talk about. There's industrial sabotage, there's cyber sabotage, and we need to bring in people with key expertise on those things. And then I think Europe needs to create, as sort of Matthew was just talking about, these sort of boutique new partnerships around the world, and not only just in Europe. Europe needs to think about focusing on new bilateral or minilateral trade or intelligence cooperation deals within Europe itself, but perhaps thinking broader. What about Japan? What about South Korea? If the war in Ukraine has showed us anything, it's that this war has sort of been so globalized, it's dragging in people like North Korea and Iran as well. And then the fourth point that we proposed was to collaborate more with private industry. This is a burgeoning new section of intelligence, and rather than seeing it as sort of outside the traditional intelligence community, I think we need to sort of broaden our definition of what a national intelligence community can be.
So that last one, Matthew, is probably true no matter what the rupture is like, right? The private, we've talked a lot about that here, the private-public partnership. But to you, Matthew, either with things to add to what Ronan said, but I'm also struck by this notion that really what you describe in terms of the new partnerships on intelligence sharing, they mirror what's being talked about. And it's astonishing stuff if you think about where we were just 2-3 months ago, that there are going to be all these new multilateral and bilateral military relationships in Europe that may freeze out the United States or vice versa.
It's true. And I think on one hand, I would say that it speaks to the unprecedented is a term that historians don't love to break out, but it speaks to the level of uncertainty and transition that we might be seeing. I don't know that many European partners are going to be quick to deny the United States a role as a willing partner whenever possible. But I think that we are right to consider some of the moves we're seeing in Europe, especially around defense spending, to speak to a real realization to put action behind some of these these concerns that seem impossible to ignore at this point. But I just wanted to kind of, as an additional point, I wanted to kind of stay on that for a second, just to say that while we raise some kind of alarming possibilities within this piece at the way at the current forecast might look going forward for American European intelligence liaison, I think it's important to note that these probably will proceed at a very normal pace, barring any really unforeseen ruptures. And part of the reason for that is for some really strong things that we try to highlight in these sort of strategic outlooks and the personal relationships that have bound these services together through cooperation and through shared experience. And those last in particular, I think, might have a strong chance of preserving large parts of the relationship. But I think when we see some of the others start to slip, these are where the recommendations that Ronan and I tried to offer here might come in to fill some of the gap or to level the playing field a little bit more.
Yeah, that's I always like ending on an optimistic note, especially in these days. And you've given us one. Matthew Heffler and Ronan Mainprice, really appreciate you being with us. Again, the piece is Trump and Europe's intelligence sharing problem. It's at thecipherbrief.com. And we wish you well and for better days ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.